Give it a start. Welcome to Overcoming Adversity, a global brainstorm for the event industry by Zkipster and BizBash. In just a few short weeks, the COVID-19 crisis reshaped the world, our personal world, and the professional world, the professional events world as well. As we all scramble to keep our business afloat and adapt to a new reality, there's an urgent need to come together. That becomes very obvious. We have more than 1,200 registrations for the webinar right now. A vast majority is already logged in. As a global guest list management platform serving almost more than 30,000 event professionals worldwide, we at Zkipster decided to unite a group of leaders from all around the world. To help us understand and unpack what's happening. I think that's really what we all need as this has started so fast and has become so confusing. Prepare for what's ahead and help each other to get through this. So I want to introduce you to the panel today. We have communications consultant Chloé Reuter from Reuters Communications in Shanghai, calling in tonight, I have to say, from Hong Kong. Welcome, Chloé. We have fashion publicist Silvia Negri Firman from Negri Firman PR and Communications, dialed in from Milan in Italy. We have event producer JB Miller, president and CEO of Empire Events, New York City. We were supposed to have Bertie de Rougemont, owner of Seller Society, high-end catering from London, couldn't make it, had to excuse himself today. Hopefully he feels great and all's good, and we can follow up soon. So shout out to Bertie. And we have a co-moderator today, which is David Adler from BizBash. So the panel will be moderated by myself, David Becker, CEO of Zkipster, and co-moderated by David Adler, founder of BizBash, the premier media resource for the event industry in the United States. And I want to start with you, David. Let's lay the land a little bit. You're dialing in from Washington, D.C. Usually you're also based in New York. You're one of the most connected person, if not the most connected person in events in North America that I know. You are connected in several cities, markets across the States and Canada. You have your eyes and ears everywhere. And you've seen the event industry really blossom in the last 10 years. And now you've seen it fold in just a couple of days. What do you hear from your people out in the market and from your friends in the industry?
For taking such a leadership role and bringing this panel together. It's really been fabulous. I've been doing a lot of these types of panels in the last few weeks, and I think that people are still shell-shocked at the quickness of what's happening. And that I was mentioning earlier on the call that there's also people at different levels. So some people in certain markets are not taking it as seriously as others. And then we see what's going on in New York, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see how quickly the thing has become a battle and a war. And sometimes we're seeing people not taking it as seriously as they should, even though they're scared to death. We found that people want to connect with each other, like what we do in our own businesses, what an event is to bring people together. These local communities are ecosystems in their own right, and everybody's been helping each other. And I've seen groups form left and right where they're different event organizations are helping each other. They're combining resources. They're helping each other on legal issues, on HR issues, and that's been a very refreshing thing to see. I think that people have been, up until recently, underestimating when we're going to go back online, and that's why I'm curious to hear what's going on in Shanghai and other places so we can get a beat on that. I think that the idea that the industry is going to be the same is a falsity, and I think that we're going to hear from JB on that. I know that he's going to talk about that things are going to change based on this, and but I don't think that the idea of people not connecting will go away. It's just how they connect.
Thank you for these first couple of thoughts. I wanted to pick up something we just discussed backstage before we started, which is really this notion that This is a global call, and Zkipster is a global platform. That's why we brought in the world. People are dialed in from everywhere. I see India dialed in. We have Chloé from Asia. We have had emails from all over the world with questions coming in. It is everywhere a little bit different. So I mean, as a European living in the States, I've been seeing this coming a little earlier than most that I felt around me. And probably the same happened in Europe 2 weeks before. So it's really hard to get everybody's mind on the same page. But I think what we can say now is that the severity is here, and people have started to really realize everywhere that this is probably larger than we think it is. How did you feel the response from the market in North America, especially in these last 7 days, David?
I've heard lots of conversations on deposits and on business as usual things in places that are not hit yet. And then I'm hearing in places like New York is how do we redeploy the assets of our industry to help in hospitals and to use the skill set that we have as professionals to volunteer and help. And our major convention center is going to be a hospital for 1,000 people minimum. And so that is going to be online for a long time. And so that's kind of what we're seeing. I think we're in lockdown here in DC. The world is changing. People are afraid of their economic security on top of the fear, which makes it doubly major anxiety for everybody. And I'm curious to hear how people are dealing with that.
So pick up on the economic security in the U.S. There's a rescue package that has been coming out of the Congress now, but it seems to be unclear at least how it's going to get into people's hands. How do you see this evolve over the next 5 to 10 days in the U.S. for the event industry?
I think that the actual, I mean, I've gotten lots of calls. Let's lobby and let's sort of get a piece of the action. But I think that some of the industry leaders, the exhibition industry, the travel industry, and things like that are taking care of a lot of that. The biggest fear I see is the actual execution and the regulations that are going to create so much red tape, because our businesses are in a race against time from a cash flow perspective. That is the biggest issue that we got going. And people, it's nice to make really great, thoughtful decisions, but when you're up against the wall that your business as an entrepreneur is going to close, that your workers are not going to be able to, eat and pay their rent or whatever, that is adding such a layer of anxiety. And I think that the speed in which this thing is happening is really fast from the point of view of the government, but is really slow in terms of the point of view of person's everyday activities. April 1st is a rent day for people. A lot of places are not going to be paying rent. A lot of places people are not going to be paying their bills. This cash flow thing is real. And I'm curious to hear JB's and everyone else's opinion on this.
All right, let's dive into the panel. Let's try to share. I think one of the values we can add here is the international scope of this conversation. But having also said that, all of the countries have different jurisdictions and rescue packages coming out. So hopefully we can hear some ideas of how the Europeans are responding to that and how in Asia the response has been. So let's go right to Asia. I wanna introduce first to you Chloé Reuter. Chloé is based in Shanghai, but spent the last 2 weeks in transit in Hong Kong, and just learned last night that she's based there indefinitely, as China has just closed the border to all Chinese nationals, all non-Chinese nationals, to prevent a second outbreak. So there is already a new reality there going on in Asia, which is as they are 1 or 2 months ahead. Chloé, you have 120 people working for your agency, about a fifth of your businesses and events, including usually store launches, media influencer events, brand activations all over mainland China and Hong Kong. We want to bring you on first because we want a positive note. So can you give us a positive note?
Thank you, David, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's wonderful how technology can bring us all together, and I'm thrilled to be here to hopefully share with you all a little bit of my experience over the last 2.5 months. So actually, I haven't been home in quite a while, and I found myself outside of China at the beginning of Chinese New Year and the annual break that we get, which is a big holiday. And I found myself in the US when basically it all sort of erupted in China, and there was a lot of chaos and travel restrictions as a result. So I feel like I've been on a world tour running away from this virus. And I remember, David, we saw each other in New York about 6 weeks ago, and I remember we talked at length about the COVID-19. And I think in those days we were probably all a bit naive in thinking that it wasn't going to impact the rest of the world quite so much. And obviously today we see a very different reality. But back to businesses and back to our industry as a whole, I think that the challenges that we are all facing today on a personal and on a business level are incredibly tough. And I think that we as an agency, we've learned an awful lot in the last couple of months through weathering this. And I hope that I can share some advice about how we hope to come out the other side, stronger. But I firmly believe that all of our businesses will be quite different when we come out of this. I think that the fact that we're now working in the office in Shanghai, we have most of our staff back, but we were closed for about 5 weeks, and actually even resetting the rhythm of that office and getting people back in the office and, getting people's trust to come back in the office was also a challenge, because, if you imagine what the rest of the world is now experiencing, China experienced it, earlier on. And so, even getting everyone back in the office, I think was quite a challenge. But I'm happy to say that, we do really see reasons for optimism, cautious optimism coming from China. I've been speaking to a lot of our clients and retailers, and in the last week or so, the government has relaxed the restrictions, for example, of everyone having to wear face masks on the street. So now you only have to put on your face mask if you go into an enclosed space. People are still wearing face masks, but I think there is a feeling that life is coming back to what it maybe was before. People are still very cautious, but people are shopping, people are out having brunch, people are meeting friends, they are in the park. So I think that with spring, there is a renewed sense of optimism that China is getting back on track. Certainly we've had encouraging results from retailers, offline retailers, but also on the e-commerce front. So,
that's good to hear. I mean, that's at least a positive notion to start,
yes.
But it's a cautious optimism. So what is it that concerns you?
I think there are a number of things that concern, that are worrying for the situation, and actually something that I'm experiencing now in Hong Kong. So I've been in Hong Kong for 15 days, and as David said, just yesterday overnight, the Chinese government announced that all non-Chinese passport holders will not be able to come back into China. Now, obviously very surprising, but yet many countries are actually doing similar things and have closed their borders. So I think we need to point out that, even in New Zealand and Australia, unless you're a citizen of those countries, you are not allowed to just freely go in. But I think for China and for Hong Kong, where I am right now, I think that there's a real fear of a second wave. And principally the new cases that have been coming in from overseas, bringing in new cases of COVID-19 are a real cause for concern, because in Hong Kong, for example, with 7 million inhabitants, you only had about 150 cases up to 2 weeks ago. And yet in the last 10 days, you're having, spikes of cases every day. So actually Hong Kong in the last week also closed its borders to all non-Hong Kong residents. So it's, I don't think that, anyone can be complacent here. I think it's the fact that we all travel so much, and that, people are jumping on planes and they're worried because they're in Europe, and people are coming, back to Asia. And, the problem is that, it's very difficult to contain this, because it's just on such an enormous scale. But what does that mean for business? I think that from my perspective, I am encouraged by the fact that we're seeing resilience in the market. I think after a lot of people having been cooped up, quarantined, in lockdown, there's a term which I don't like, but people are using, revenge spending. And, it's true. People are out. They want to feel better. They want to have a good experience. They want to reconnect with friends. And that, it's just human nature, right? We all want to be connected. And so you are seeing a sort of start and a resumption to spending. So I think that's a great sign. It's a great sign for all of us who work in our field, in marketing and communications and events. However, what I will say is that, events, as in all parts of the world, have been severely impacted. And so we've had a lot of events. Really everything from end of January has been cancelled. But I don't think that we're going to see in the short term a resumption in those sort of amazing large scale or even small scale events that we were having in China. I think that if you look at Shanghai Fashion Week, it's put the whole of the Fashion Week online, working with some fantastic tech partners like Alibaba and Tencent. So I think they're bringing around 150 shows online. And WWD China is also doing a sustainable forum or conference online. So I think that, we've got great tech products that are enabling us to move events online. And I think that, for everyone in the rest of the world who I think is beginning this arduous journey of how on earth do we deal with, life in the COVID-19 era, I think that China's got some incredible examples when it comes to how they've been implementing new technology and, and just so many different tech-enabled solutions for all of us who are working from home and also for retailers.
So we're going to tap into virtual events and trying to figure out and unpack what that means and how we do that. Before we move forward into that direction, I wanted to ask you, for all of us who are now in Europe and in the US trying to find out how to keep the company afloat and how to keep the people sane, how did you do that in the last 2 months?
That's it's been probably the toughest thing that I've ever been through. And as the business owners and the entrepreneurs know on this call, starting a business and building a business is already very tough. But I think that, at the essence of it, I think that we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with people who have families and who have lives, and I feel extremely responsible in terms of trying to keep that sort of balance and to try and preserve what we've built, which is a very special company with an amazing culture of kindness. And so my business partner and I decided to not take a salary anymore. So we decided that last month, and hopefully it won't continue too long. But in the meantime, I think that's been, one way that we've cut costs. We've really looked at, where can we cut costs so that we're not affecting our people. And I think that, we've managed successfully up till now to battle through this without losing any of our people. And the government in China has been supporting businesses as well. Rent has also we've had discounts on office rents and other things like that. Obviously, nothing's going to replace the fact that if your clients are not able to hire you for a certain period and they have to cut things here and there, I mean, that's obviously a huge hit. But I think communications is super important. We are, I mean, the problem is I'm not even in China right now. I'm in Hong Kong, China, but I'm not in Shanghai where our headquarters are. So it's difficult because I'm not actually with people, but, video calls, we're trying to always keep to the rhythm of our meetings. Even when everyone was working from home, we would be doing our Monday morning town hall meetings. But I think it's really important to communicate, and it's really important to be transparent and, not try and say absolutely everything's brilliant and, we're all fine. I think the reality is that it's very difficult for a lot of people. So I think, kindness is probably the most important thing right now, but it goes also to our clients. We're in daily contact with our clients. What can we do? How can we help? I think that it's a time where I'm seeing a lot of wonderful things happen as well, and a lot of people reaching out to each other. And as I think as David just mentioned, companies coming together and saying, hey, how can we help each other? What have we learned from this? A bit like this forum. This forum's all about sharing, and hopefully we can all get some tips to put into action.
Thank you for giving us a first kind of idea of how Asia is dealing, and how we can maybe a little bit anticipate. I think we need to find a balance, strike a balance between crystal ball and speculation, which is tricky, and trying to really read and make sense of the signals that are already tangible. So thank you for sharing that with us and the people here on the call. Wanted to bring the conversation, we'll come back to you, Chloe. We want to bring the conversation to Italy, to Silvia. Italy was the first one to have a very, very large hit outside of China, and has become the country in Europe that is really, really hit hard now. It's spread across the continent, but been in lockdown for a while. So Silvia, you have been seeing a cancellation starting in February, right after Milan Fashion Week, which was still going, and almost it fell off the cliff right after. Events is a substantial part of your business as well. You're a communications consultant for fashion and luxury, and they're being canceled until June and until further notice. So how are you holding up personally, dialing in from Milan, knowing that Milan is under severe lockdown for several weeks now?
Really, the emergency started at the end of Fashion Week. We started hearing the first scary news on the last 2 days, and then all of a sudden we were in the emergency. As Chloé said, everything goes super quick. So every day you have updates, and every day the scenery changes. The first reaction, my first thought was for the safety of my team. So we actually started working in smart working very, very early, the Monday after Fashion Week. And second, and the same level of priority, was the sake of my clients and my, so we started right away, thinking what we could do for them, what we could do, how we could still do our work from home, how we could handle all of the different activities. As a communication agency, basically everything for our clients. Events are a big part of our business, from small events, press presentations and influencers experience, to major events, but also daily communication, which is made, as you know, meetings, relations, and all of that. So that was very challenging, and it is still very challenging. We all think we need to react, find solutions, and luckily technology supports us. My team went home. We started working all together with morning calls and shared projects, and the situation got worse and worse and worse. So the first week we actually had to cancel a big number of already planned and confirmed events of every type, including big trade fairs. The first one to be cancelled was Mido, the International Eyewear Fair, and then Salone del Mobile, which for us is a big, of course, business, and for Milano as well. And then fashion shows and everything has been postponed and postponed. We still don't know exactly what is going to be held just in a later day, or what it will be definitely cancelled. The situation is too challenging to understand that. But definitely one thing was clear from the beginning, that we couldn't propose any event activity, or not even any activity that including the meeting or the gathering of people. So I think we are there to find solutions, and the only way to react is to be positive and constructive and find different ways to do our work. This is what we are supposed to do. And I think the creative component of our work. It's our biggest weapon, because we need to keep on changing and developing, and that is the nature of our work anyhow. And I think when of course, no one of us could ever think of finding ourselves in an emergency of this type or facing this type of situation, not even when we watch movies in the past. I was proposing something like this. It was, like a surreal idea. Now we are here, we need to react. React includes a number of different levels, because we're all shocked and all emotionally involved. We're all worried for our family and dears. We're all worried in the case of an entrepreneur like us, for our team. And then, of course, we're also worried for our future, for the business.
So, if I may, a lot of the planners and event professionals that are dialed in are only doing events. You're also in a fortunate situation where you have also communications consulting and a PR side of the business. So maybe you can help us understand how, if some of that offline conversation at events can be moved online, how some of the work that has been already put in and that creative work you're referring to can be moved towards a different channel, an online channel.
I mentioned the other day to you on the phone that we didn't find a solution yet. We're still, brainstorming and challenging ourselves in finding good ideas. We are watching what everyone else is doing in other countries, what China is doing. I think that, for example, the Shanghai Fashion Week online is a good positive sign of the fact that things can be done in a different way. The Italian lifestyle, Italians also suggest a way to be doing events online, because we have a very special lifestyle. We like gathering with people, we like celebrating, we like singing. If you go online, if you check what's happening in Italy right now, you can see that there is a huge number of concerts which are made by people singing by their windows. Not only people, but even professionals playing together, each one from his home, entire orchestra working, drinks gathering organized on Zoom, different type of relationship, and even on an event side party. We are sharing playlists on disco playlists on WhatsApp, and meeting, each one is in his home and stuff like that. So this is what's happening in the street. What we're trying to do is try to take inspiration from this and creating a different way to meet people, and also to present our clients' products, because many of our events, of course, or the events that we organize normally, are made to support our clients and to support their business. So we need to find a different way to present products in a way which is as more real as possible, and not only to final clients, but to the industry, to journalists, for example. We work in fashion, so one of the very first events that we had to cancel were the seasonal press days. Presentation of, samples of the new collections to the stylists and the editors and the influencers that we work with that physically. This is something we are still discussing, but we have found a number of interesting ideas that we are trying to develop. We are lucky. We don't work only on events, so only 50% of our business has got canceled so far. But also the other part is very challenging right now.
So we have this other part, and what's interesting here is that we can see this new way of collaboration emerges. Yeah. You said also in private, and everybody becomes Zoom friendly. I think soon it will be a word to Zoom, and so there is this new opportunity. Can you maybe help us understand a little bit, and I know it's early, but how do you anticipate in a month or 2 or 3 months when the measures are going to lax a little bit, what could it mean? How could an offline, maybe a small gathering look like? Will there be new regulations, sanitation-wise, size-wise of the crowd? What does your gut tell you, and how do you prepare for that? I know it's early, but I know everybody is thinking about it.
Yeah, we are, we are talking to each client about their specific case. I think each company has different position, different reality based also on their business model. If 2 or 3 weeks ago we were all thinking that at the end of this we would have all gone into the street and party from morning to night. Now I think we all have very clear ideas about the fact that it will take some time to go back to what we were doing before, if we go back to what we were doing before, because I think this moment will change our vision of life, and probably will impact on priorities and ways of doing and ways of relating among individuals. So we need to take in consideration that when we will get out from the quarantine and from the emergency, people will still be quite diffident and will try to take a distance, we think. So we are taking into consideration the idea that events will start on a very small scale, on a very private scale, and we need to develop ideas for that, which means maybe one-to-one meetings, maybe small groups, maybe closed doors. Of course, taking into consideration all of the rules, including sanitizing everything and making sure, I think it's a moment to work on positive yet certain messages. If we invite let's say we come out from this in a month or 2, if we invite a group of clients or journalists or whatever stakeholder we are considering to invite somewhere, we need to make sure, first of all, that we invite them in a safe environment. And the safety of the environment will probably be measured by the selected number of people that will be able to take part of that. And then we need to make sure that they will feel at ease. So size will go down to small size, controllable size, and then of course the experience also will probably have an importance to make them feeling well.
So the security and this new aspect will become part of the experience. As experienced designers, we need to prepare how to model that experience into the events.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you for that prospect, and we'll also come back to you, Silvia, dialed in from Milan, from Negri Firman. We also want to talk about virtual events, David Adler. Right. Virtual events is something that we can do now versus what Silvia described is what we're probably going to start doing, hopefully by summer. So let's talk about that. And let's bring in JB Miller, who is a former TV producer and an events producer. And that's where they merge the worlds in a virtual events. So let's help us better understand.
So JB Miller, Empire Events usually produces events like the Time 100 Gala, and he's deeply concerned about the city. And JB is my brainstorming buddy in many cases. One of the things that we call this webinar a brainstormer on purpose, because we're trying to create the idea of a global brainstorming process that we can all get together and take these ideas. This may be the first one that we're doing to sort of set the table, but we want everybody to be thinking, we want everybody not to have global brainstormers, but take advantage of brainstorming in your office today, because this is when innovation happens at its best. And JB is one of the most innovative guys I know, and we're happy to have him here to talk about some of the initiatives that he's been thinking about. And he jumps on stuff in a fast way and understands how it's hard to execute, but you still have to have the idea first. Go ahead, JB, give us a little sense of what's going on with your initiatives right now.
Sure. I mean, I'll talk about resilience a little later, but on this topic of virtual events, I mean, I think, first off, I want to thank David and David for hosting this gathering today and for, sharing this important information. Sylvia and Chloe, thank you for joining, and to everybody around the world that's participating this morning, thank you for joining and showing up. I'm going to sound a somewhat optimistic note throughout my presence today. I do believe COVID is custom-made industry killer for the live events industry. Nothing has struck fear into the idea of putting large groups of people together quite like this, and it has idled people around the world, and not just event producers, but clients, freelancers, caterers, creatives. An entire constellation of people are sitting worried, as they should be, about what's going to happen next. What I would like to say is that, events will continue. This is temporary, and in every sense, people still need to communicate. They need to be inspired. They need to be entertained. They need to connect with each other. And that's what we do as an industry. And all of those skill sets, thinking about narrative, thinking about place, thinking about how to use technology, and thinking about how to storytell, are still valid and are really, I would argue, now needed more than ever before. So as an industry, this is an opportunity for us to step up and just pivot to different platforms and continue to do what we do. On the subject of virtual events, I mean, we're fortunate both because I come from a live television background as well as an event production background, but also because in our 26 history at Empire, almost every event that we've done has a virtual or live stream or broadcast or post-event content component to it. So it really hasn't been that difficult for us to wrap our heads around how we're going to translate what we're doing now and what we can do for clients into different kinds of platforms. I'm seeing a lot of discussion about technology platforms and requests for that, which I'll get to in a little bit. I would say that almost any event that would have taken place has a virtual interpretation, has the ability to be presented whether we can put large groups of people in a room or not. And there are many technology platforms now, Zoom, this one that we're on together, that enable that in interesting and new, exciting ways. And we as an industry are just beginning to crack the code on how to use these, how to make them entertaining, how to bring in different ideas, how to make it last, and so on. We as Empire are actively involved in quite a number of events. As soon as COVID hit, we had, as everybody else did, an enormous number of cancellations and postponements. But we also had an enormous number of clients say, we now need to do our event virtually, or can we translate what we were going to do into a piece of content and figure out a way to get that out there? Or can we break what would have been one large event up into multiple conversations so that we can then figure out ways to do it online? And we are actively, I mean, this week, next week, and ongoing, doing live conferences. We're creating live festivals. We're creating live entertainment events. Some of you probably read the New York Times story about DJ Be Nice, doing his live DJ sets with celebrity participants around the world. We are suddenly discovering many ways to use the technology to bring people together, whether we can be in one, personal space or not. I think what we're finding right now is that almost every event that we are working on is now being interpreted as a virtual event, and we're actively working to find ways to make that happen.
Maybe can I ask you a question in terms of the people that are watching, who are seeing their worlds fall apart because of virtual? How are they expected to pivot and give them some advice? Because it's scary what you're saying, because their whole world is going to be changed based on what you're saying. And I do believe that events are coming back, but the fear factor is still so high that we may not be in the position to say, okay, the past is gone, and we're rethinking everything. It just felt fears.
Events are unquestionably going to come back. It's a temporary thing. It is terrible. I say this from the epicenter now of global COVID in New York City. We haven't reached our apex yet, and this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better, but it will get better, and we will be doing events again. You know, every individual has their own perspective. Some people are, you know, agency owners like myself. Some people are caterers. You know, some people are working in support of the industry. And in each instance, you have your own unique perspective on how this has affected you and what you can be doing now. But I would say this is a moment to get creative about it. You know, we are the producers of the New York Times Food Festival, for example. And, you know, we were just talking the other day about, like, hey, you know what, if we can't put people together and we can't cook and we can't do chef events, you know, why don't we start doing live cooking events? And why don't we allow, you know, chefs to start hosting nightly, you know, events of that nature. You know, that's just one particular kind of manifestation of that. But I would say, think about your own position, think about what the underlying skill set is that you represent, and then think about, and maybe it's a brainstorm, how to pivot that skill set into what is available to you now. That's abstract advice for people.
Well, I'll give you some. Let me give you some. Simon Miller, I just had who has a fabrication company, pivoted his fabrication company into creating. How do you create sort of cubbies for home offices?
Sure.
And so we have to be more innovative now than ever.
Sure.
And that's what we want to hear, some of the practical tips that you can give to people. That, like, what did you do on day one as a leader?
Sure.
To create the atmosphere for innovation?
Sure. I want to split that question into two answers. The first is, I think there's a lot of business leaders and there's a lot of people that work in companies. And I just also want to give a little bit of a practical roadmap for what we did as a business, because Empire has survived the internet crash. We survived 2009. You know, we survived Sandy. We survived 9/11. You know, in each instance, we had to pivot a little bit, and then we came back, you know, bigger and better and stronger than ever after that. You know, just as a practice, you know, you do start to trim expenses in the short term. You know, the last and the final resort would be furloughs and layoffs, and I've never gotten there, and I hope I never will. But there are things that you can do to mitigate expense, or at least slow your monthly run rate of expenses. We looked at both what we made, what we had going on. We looked at our expenses, and then we tried to find ways to sort of bring down the expenses, bring up the revenues, and create a more sustainable platform to push out the number of months, you know, that you can survive without any new income, and so on. Another practice that we put into place, which I actually found really helpful, was a lot of our events in the third and fourth quarter of this year and into next year suddenly became not in a position to sign major event contracts to move forwards. Or the Olympics, as you know, we all know, in Tokyo, where we have a huge presence, just got postponed, you know, into next year. And what we found with many of those clients is we don't have to stop work. We just convert it to a monthly retainer so that the work and the planning can continue when we come out of this on the far side, and everybody is willing to do that. So putting retainer relationships in place, you know, is another, you know, tool that we've been able to find. And then, you know, finally, to your point, convening working groups that say, what can we do with the skill sets that we have now in order to move forward? So, I mean, one of our employees said, hey, we're converting the Javits Center into you know, a medical and healthcare facility. We convert the Javits Center all the time. Can we help with that? Is there something that we can do, you know, in response to COVID? Anyway, I'm jumping around.
No, that's exactly the point, that yeah, we have to be nimble. Sure. And we also have to be pragmatic.
Look, I think what's available to us right now in the most obvious way is don't stop being the events industry. Just be an events industry that embraces the technologies that are available to help us at this moment and get through, and use this as an opportunity to innovate and pioneer new ways to do things. You know, everybody's scared of this sort of virtual thing just because they haven't really done it, you know, and dove into this. It's not that hard. All the same questions. What's our objective? You know, who are we trying to reach? What's our audience? What's our narrative? You know, what is the scene setting that we're going to use in order to tell the story? How do we, you know, interact with people? But, you know, these technologies are giving us new opportunities. All of a sudden, the events don't And the moment the doors close and the last audience member leave, they can live on forever, as this conversation no doubt will once it's posted on web content. The audience size is now potentially limitless, because instead of just reaching the 1,200 people in that hall or theater, suddenly we can reach a potentially global audience and an eternal audience. So all of these are ways that we can embrace technologies to keep doing events.
How do you convince your clients not to go dark and decide that they want to continue, even though half of the people and the corporations may lose their jobs, and they have no control over that?
I think that, most of the clients don't need convincing. They know that they also have a business that needs to run. They know that they need to engage with consumers or customers or employees or otherwise. They are, if anything, being very proactive about reaching out to us and saying, how do we do the event that we would have otherwise done, or serve the purpose that we need to serve now? And Empire's is built an entire virtual events guide, which is available to anybody on this call. Just reach out to us to help people navigate this transition.
Yep. And also, I think all of us are trying to garner resources, and BizBash is doing the same thing. So please, all of this stuff is all free. People need to learn it, and also there's some advantages. David, you want to go to questions, and then we can
like I'm watching closely the questions, and a lot of it actually is being covered as we speak, which is great. I think it's pretty much united. People wonder, like, how is this gonna move forward, like in the short and mid and long term. I want to pick up one thing that JB, we spoke over the phone this week, which really impressed me, and it's when I listen to you, first of all, it makes me feel great. I think we're going to get through this. The industry will come out at the other end, even if it looks differently. That's great, right? But you also have this task force in your company that you put together, and you assigned to them and told them, listen, you have the job to come out with answers of what if there's no events anymore? What can this great group of people that we have in this company do? And if I listen to this conversation here, I also feel like we're engagement designers, and engagement experts, and brands and the world needs engagement more than ever. So what is coming out of this task force, I wonder, and how can you inspire that people that are listening are using a similar tactic just to open up and be ready for everything?
I can't hear him.
Question for me or the group?
Yeah. I wanted to ask. Sorry, you were on mute quickly. We want to shoot you the question. You have to task force together, and then I want to open up Silvia and Chloé.
Yeah, I mean, our task force was a worst case scenario task force. What if there's no events after this? What would we do? And again, it comes from the premise of, between creatives and technical people and producers and doers and planners and designers and budgeters and consultants, how do we put those people together? Because all of those skill sets can be recombinated in a variety of ways that provide ongoing value to clients. We have the important ingredients. We have clients, we have creativity, we have need and necessity, and we have the ability to shape forms and vehicles that solve those kinds of problems. So we've been talking about anything from, broadcast programming, creating content, creating narratives, documentary series, creating virtual live concerts and participations. I mean, even nightclubs and, restaurants can be created virtually. So, all of these are ideas on the table, but I really don't think that we're going to get there. I think as exciting as some of those ideas are, I think we're going to be back to the task of doing large live events before too long.
Silvia, Chloé, I wanted to invite you to join in the conversation and pick maybe some of JB's ideas up and shoot questions back at all of us.
Thank you. I must say, JB, I love your enthusiasm, and you've given me a lot to think about. I really believe that some of the things you touch upon, we're seeing them in China. I speak for the part of the world that I know a little bit more about, but I think that China really has been an example of embracing technology in the last 2 months. I mean, China lives in its own ecosystem of apps and social media anyway, but I think that the fact that it has this unique system also has given rise to a lot of creativity and a lot of very China specific applications that we use on a daily basis. So I think that we're already seeing examples of wonderful events going online. For example, we just, and Silvia, you mentioned it as well, the Shanghai Fashion Week. You know, I think let's watch that closely. I can share the link with you guys, but it's happening in the next week. I think that it'll be interesting to see how WWD is China is pulling that whole sustainability forum, and it's lasting a few weeks. It's sort of a kind of episodes of a conference. So I think we've got some great examples to already look at, and I think that because of the restrictions that we all have with movement, it's making all of us reassess, and especially for these fashion weeks and the press open houses and all of those that are a lot of our bread and butter. It's, you know, what do we need to do? How can we now support our clients and our brands? I mean, one thing we're doing in Shanghai is we've offered our showroom for free to any brand or any young designer who, you know, would benefit from using it, whether it's for live streaming to try and showcase products so that they can, you know, link them through live streaming to their store on Tmall, China's answer to eBay. Or they want to do, you know, small sample sales that they want to put online somehow. So I think that we do need to think out the box. And I love, JB, I love what you've said. I think it's brilliant, and I think that, you know, you should write us a guide about how to do that. And I think that would be a good business model for you right there.
Email me afterwards. I'll send it to you.
I have a question for Chloé. One of the things we're looking for, and we touched on that a little bit earlier on, is when is the coast clear? Because that is still the biggest question that I'm hearing. People in the US are saying, okay, September we're going to be good, and then November we're going to be good. I mean, what is the reality of what you're seeing on the ground as the first mover in a sense?
David, I wish I had my crystal ball right here, but unfortunately I don't. I think that it will be a cautious optimism. I think that, as Silvia mentioned, I don't think it's going to be the way that we used to live. I don't think suddenly CNN says it's all over and off we go outside and we go party like we used to, or we go to a big conference and sit in a big trade hall. I really don't think that will happen.
Do you think that in China, do you think that we're even, now that you're sort of, when people say that they're reducing restrictions and we're very cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
Cautious optimisticness is still months away as opposed to weeks away. And when that's my sense of what it is.
I mean, I'm seeing, for example, Design Shanghai is still aiming to hold its big annual event now in May. So we'll see if that goes forward. They moved it from March to May. I know that in September, some of the luxury brands are planning events in Shanghai and Beijing. And I think it will be interesting to watch. I mean, bear in mind that we haven't had schools in China open since January. So I think that, you know, life isn't back to normal quite yet. People are back in the office and, you know, businesses are getting back, but, you know, we're still, the schools are still not open. And, you know, Wuhan, which was the epicenter of the outbreak in China, is still on lockdown till April 8th. So they've been on lockdown since January 23rd, I think, and you know they're still under lockdown. And so I think that every place will be treated differently. So I think we need to I think we need to adapt, because September can seem an awfully long way away for an offline event. So I think we need to figure out what we're doing in the interim. But
I have one question there. One of the questions that came in from the audience was big tentpole events like the Olympic. It was a blow that when they were canceled. Usually the event industry is moving the agenda along the big ones. And the big ones are more likely to be canceled because they're big. So what is the orientation? How do we re-navigate here, Chloé, JB, and Silvia?
You know, for me, my opinion is that for now, we need to stick to JB approach, be very open and very creative, and try to see, to work on different scenarios, because we are in a different position than China. We are let's say maybe 1 month back. Situation keeps changing.
Wait,
so
wait, can you, Silvia,
Yeah.
you say you're 1 month back? Is that?
I mean, sorry, behind.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
that was.
No, we are 1 month behind. We are in the peak right now of the emergency, especially in Milano and in Milano area, which is the event area. So all of the major events have been at the beginning postponed, and then postponed again, and now they got cancelled, one by after the other one. And of course, all of the more smaller events follow the big ones. But we really need to keep our mind open and try to find daily solutions, I think, which then can be adapted. And then for sure we will go back to reality, to the normality, but we don't know when. So we need to be creative. And I think, and this is something I experiencing every day, in our industry, we are privileged compared to other ones, because we are used to make miracles in 1 day. Again, like JB said before, we are used to change the Javits Center in 1 day. So we can be quite useful right now. So what we are doing right now is that, because we are working a little bit less, which is not true, we are overloaded trying to find solutions, but at the same time, we are using our expertise to support what is happening. So for example, we are supporting the collection of funds for the Italian hospitals. Some of our companies are actually converted their factories in producing stuff that is needed in the hospitals and stuff like that. And then we are communicating that, and then we are collecting funds. So it's, it is what it is. We are living through. We need to try to keep everything safe, our business, our staff, but also keeping our approach and our team approach open to the change. There is no secret right now recipe, in my opinion.
I wanted to bring the conversation before we go to an end back to monetization, and because what becomes clear in the last 55 minutes that even if we have positive signals from Asia, it's gonna be around for a while, and it's gonna be probably around longer than many of us can afford to keep the operations afloat. So, JB, the virtual events and question comes from the nonprofit world and monetization and donations. How do you see that? Right, like once we figure out how to move it virtual, how do we monetize?
I would just say there's a lot of creative approaches. We're currently working on a number of online galas, online auctions, both in the lead up where people can sort of bid in advance, as well as like live in events. Some of the events that we're working on will have a paywall, so that content like this would only be accessible if you had basically prepaid, and then you would receive your login credentials and so on. I guess what I would say is it really depends on whether you're a not-for-profit or whether you're a for-profit content provider or a thought leadership summit presenter like Techonomy or some of the other groups that we work with. In each instance, there's a different strategy for monetization, but as long as people are willing to continue to pay for being entertained, being informed, or connecting with other people, there is a technology platform that will allow you to swipe that credit card and participate.
Yeah,
and you guys probably have that tool as well, David.
The scary thing for
working on it.
For a lot of these events is the F&B and travel piece is really, really in challenge mode. Not that it won't come back, but that cuts a lot of the costs out of an event, which is good for event producers, but not so good for the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can come to a close, and let's try to close somehow on a positive note. We can probably acknowledge that this is bigger than we all understand. What is your final thoughts to give the community on the way that have been locked in, and I can also tell based on the 20-30 questions that have been coming in, that the concern is pretty on the same spot. So what are your final thoughts, guys?
JB?
Yeah, I would say, again, this is temporary. It will end. We will be back to work, and will be doing events. If you don't have events happening right now, look at the ones that are going to happen in Q3, Q4. See if you can start working on those, right now, because events are undoubtedly and absolutely going to be coming back. There are virtual events that you can be moving into right now, and look at your individual circumstance and what the value is that you provide in the events business. And then there is an answer to how you can apply those skill sets now gainfully to remain active within the event industry. But this will come back, and nobody panic.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to keep going. And my final thought is that this period will be difficult, but it will be also useful because also thanks to brainstorming like this, we can come out with bigger ideas. So stay strong and keep working and keep going in order to come back and bigger and stronger than before. And take it as an opportunity to maybe change our mindset. We never live something like that. So now we are living it, and we will be more prepared and also come out with better ideas. That's my point of view.
Thank you. Chloé.
Well, I think if one thing is for sure, what I'm seeing throughout all this is a proximity with so many of us that we might not have had the opportunity to have before. I think there's a lot of kindness coming out of this terrible situation, and I think it's a huge challenge. I mean, I'm not going to underestimate how hard it is for everyone, and my heart goes out to everyone. All of you who I can see right now who are not able to go outside and who are really in the thick of it. But what I will say is, there is light at the end of that dark tunnel. I'm seeing it here. It's Hong Kong, even though there are cases, feels like it's a city that's getting back on its feet. The stories from China are positive. I think that we all need to just stay in and get through this and be kind. I think we're all here because we want to help, and I think that a lot of new professional relationships are sparking from all of this, and I think that can only make it all better in the long term for all of us.
Thank you very much. David, we've put together this panel to make an effort to bring the world together, literally, and make it as global as possible. We have gathered a lot of great ideas and insights, and it becomes clear that there is a need for something like that. In the meantime, BizBash obviously has also great resources. How do we connect with BizBash and your resources, David?
Well, as a media company, this is the moment that we're able to activate communities, and we want to be a feedback loop, because we don't know, and it's not something where anybody really knows, but it's everybody's comments together that are going to turn what we do. I always say that event organizers are really collaboration artists, and that whether you're being a collaboration artist for your audience, your company, or whatever, that is kind of the skill set that really will help us get to the next level. The one key piece of information that I found after 9/11, we put together a leadership group, and we had 300 people in our event community getting together to help bring the city back. And what we found is the relationships that we were talking about earlier that were formed during that period sustained everybody for 20 years, because you got to know people as real people. And so it was a way to help each other. And I've had stories of things where my business was saved because I did one of these things in 9/11, got relationships with American Express, and they decided to do an ad campaign and paid the whole thing at once for a whole year. And leadership is kind of the secret sauce. And, if you add innovation and leadership and kindness and the humanity of what we do, we're going to get through this. And we just want to hear from everybody. If you want to send any ideas, tips@bizbash.com. We're going to try to be a feedback loop for everybody. So I can't thank everyone enough for being part of this giant hug that we want to give to each other.
Thank you very much, David Adler from BizBash. And as a technology company and Zkipster being so global, I see it as our duty to bring the world together and to spark the ideas back into the communities. This is really an opportunity to strengthen each community out there and be stronger as a global community. I wanted to thank Chloé Reuter dialing in from Hong Kong tonight. It is tonight in Hong Kong right now. I wanted to thank Silvia to dialing in from Milan, Silvia Negri Firman, JB Miller from Empire Events here in New York, dialed in, and David Adler from Washington, D.C., representing BizBash. My name is David Becker. I'm the CEO of Zkipster. What we're going to do here with this recording is we're going to put it on the Gather Geeks, BizBash Gather Geeks podcast network, available on Spotify and iTunes. Shortly, we'll also put the recording online on the Zkipster blog and through special Zkipster emails, so you can share it with the people that haven't been able to attend. We've been noting dozens of questions. Some of them we were able to answer. Others we're going to move forward and see how we can move forward this format and bring people together over this crisis that will be with us for a while. And as we all hope, and as I strongly believe too, we can come out stronger from here. You can email us at community@zkipster.com if you have inputs or wishes how we can move this format further. And that's really it. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Let's be strong together as a community and as a global community. And I wish everybody's family all the best. Stay safe and healthy. And thank you for your time today. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.